Sebastian Hale had followed people before politicians, traitors, business rivals who smiled in boardrooms and plotted in shadows. But he had never followed someone like Claire Donovan. Not a maid, not a girl who barely looked up when he passed her in the penthouse halls. Not someone who moved quietly enough to lull his insomnia, but carried sadness like it was stitched into her clothes. Yet here he was, trailing her down Park Avenue at midnight, hidden behind the tinted windows of his Mercedes. The wipers pushed aside light rain, revealing Claire running across the crosswalk, clutching a worn messenger bag against her chest. She looked smaller out here, swallowed by Manhattan's cold glow. He shouldn't have been here. He shouldn't care. But earlier that night, he had seen something on the penthouse security feed, something that froze him. The camera angle had been changed, deliberately. Someone had tampered with his system, and the only person in the penthouse during that time was Claire. He expected betrayal. He expected fear. He did not expect her to lead him to a crumbling alley in Brooklyn. Claire glanced over her shoulder before stepping into the darkness. Sebastian killed the engine, slipped out of the car, and followed on foot. His steps were silent. Her breathing was not, he could hear it, quick and uneven, like she was preparing for something awful. Then a voice sliced through the night. "Well, well, look who finally showed up." Sebastian stiffened. Two men stepped out of the shadows, blocking Claire's path. She froze, gripping her bag tighter. "I told you I'm done," she said, her voice small but steady. "I'm not doing anything for you anymore." One man laughed. "Sweetheart, you don't get to decide when this ends?" Claire swallowed hard. "Please. My aunt is dying. I don't have anything left to give you. I can't keep living like this." The taller man grabbed her arm. Claire flinched but didn't scream. That broke something in Sebastian, this silent endurance, this practiced fear. "Besides," the man continued, leaning close, "our boss doesn't like loose ends. So unless you want tonight to be your last, a red dot slid across Claire's back." Sebastian froze. Laser sight. Sniper. Before thinking, he lunged forward, tackling Claire to the ground just as the bullet tore into the wall where her spine had been. Claire gasped, trembling beneath him. The gunmen scattered like rats. Sebastian kept her shielded, his breath harsh against her ear. "You need to stay down," he murmured low, steady, controlled, the opposite of how he felt. Claire looked up at him, wide-eyed, shaken, terrified, but not surprised. Like she had always expected the world to hurt her. Like she had never expected anyone to protect her. And for the first time in years, Sebastian Hale felt something colder than danger. He felt responsible. He felt afraid, and he had no idea why. Morning in Brooklyn didn't wait for Claire Donovan, not even after nearly being killed the night before. The sun pushed through the thin curtains of her small studio apartment, revealing walls patched with tape and a kitchen barely big enough for a single burner. Her alarm buzzed on her cracked iPhone screen, the same phone she nearly smashed last night when fear overwhelmed her. She forced herself up. No time for shaking hands. No time for nightmares replaying the flash of that red laser on her back. She had a double shift ahead, first at the bookstore cafe, then at the penthouse on Park Avenue. Rent wouldn't pay itself, and the hospital had already called twice this week about her Aunt Nora's bills. Claire poured hot water over instant coffee, wincing as she flexed her wrist. It was bruised from the man who grabbed her. She hid it under her sleeve, just like she hid everything else. On the subway, squeezed between commuters scrolling through their sleek MacBooks and AirPods, Claire tucked herself into her usual corner. She kept replaying last night, the gunman, the threat, and the man who crashed into her like a force of nature. Sebastian Hale. Why had he been there? Why did he save her? Her chest tightened with dread. If he found out she'd been coerced into stepping inside his penthouse security system, she'd lose the only job keeping her afloat. Worse, he could hand her over to the police. Someone like him didn't tolerate betrayal, even unintentional. But she wasn't a traitor. She was just trapped. At the bookstore cafe, she tied her apron and forced a smile for customers. She made lattes, rang up self-help books, and ignored the throbbing in her wrist. But at noon, during her break, her phone buzzed with a message that knocked the air from her lungs. "Aunt Nora, critical. Come now!" Claire sprinted outside, racing through traffic toward Lenox Hill Hospital. When she reached the ICU window, watching her aunt lying pale and fragile beneath fluorescent lights, something inside her cracked. She pressed her forehead to the glass, whispering, "Please don't leave me. You're all I have." But deep down, she knew the truth. Without money, without protection, without someone powerful on her side, she was losing this battle. And for the first time, Claire wondered if the man who saved her last night might be the only person capable of saving her now. Sebastian Hale lived in a world where nothing, absolutely nothing, was allowed to slip out of place. His penthouse on Park Avenue reflected that truth perfectly. Marble floors polished to a mirror, glass walls overlooking Manhattan, a desk arranged with military precision. Every morning, his assistant left a Mont Blanc pen parallel to the edge of his MacBook Pro. Every night, Sebastian returned to find the room exactly as he left it. Control wasn't just a preference. It was survival. His empire depended on discipline meetings with shadowy investors, encrypted phone calls, files hand-delivered through unmarked elevators. The world saw him as a billionaire financier. The underground knew him as the man no one dared cross. After losing his fiancée in an explosion meant for him, Sebastian built walls taller than his skyscraper. Trust became a currency he refused to trade. Which is why Claire Donovan bothered him more than she should. Her presence had slipped into his life quietly, like dust on a windowsill he somehow missed. She moved through his penthouse softly, humming under her breath as she wiped glass or folded linens. Her footsteps at night, the ones he pretended not to notice, were the only thing that ever lulled him into sleep. But today, silence followed him instead. He stood in his boardroom on the 54th floor, overlooking the gray skyline. His team spoke, but he barely heard them. All he could think about was the sniper's bullet and the way Claire shook beneath him. She shouldn't matter. She was just a maid. A fragile, frightened maid, caught in something too dark for her. Yet she mattered. A vibration on the table snapped him back. Grant, his attorney, slid a file toward him. "Sebastian, this is serious. There's been activity inside your security network. Someone accessed the system using a maid's time frame." Claire's name flashed across the screen. His jaw tightened. "She isn't capable of that. You don't know that." He did. She had fear in her bones, not deceit. Whatever happened to her last night wasn't coincidence. It was connected to him. Or worse, someone wanted him to believe she was the threat. When the meeting ended, Sebastian stepped into the hallway, loosening his tie with a rare tremor in his fingers. Something was unraveling, and for the first time in years, Sebastian Hale felt a loss of control. He didn't like it. But what terrified him more was the possibility that losing control began the moment Claire Donovan entered his life. Sebastian Hale didn't believe in coincidences, especially not inside his penthouse, the only place in Manhattan he considered untouchable. So when Grant sent him the timestamp showing tampered security footage, the same timestamp Claire Donovan had been working, something cold slid down his spine. He replayed the clip in his office, slowing it frame by frame. The camera angle wasn't smashed or forcibly pulled. It was tilted carefully, almost gently, just enough to blind a portion of the hallway. Not the work of a professional hacker. More like someone terrified, desperate, someone who didn't want to be seen doing something they were forced into. Someone like Claire. He leaned back in his leather chair, brows tightening. Claire didn't look like a threat, not with her oversized sweaters, soft voice, or those apologetic eyes that kept avoiding his. But last night, she had walked into a Brooklyn alley like a girl walking into her own funeral. And the fear in her voice? It had been real. Still, the question gnawed at him. Why was she involved at all? Sebastian opened her employee file. Clean background, minimal history, nothing remarkable except a flagged notation from her previous job. Discrepancy involving missing funds. She had never mentioned that. His jaw tightened. Was she hiding guilt or shame? A knock pulled him from his thoughts. His head of security stepped in. "We reviewed the footage around the altered camera," the man said. "No one else was on that floor but Claire." Sebastian's gaze sharpened. And someone might have used her as a cover, or she did it herself. He dismissed the man with a wave, but unease settled deeper. Claire wasn't stupid. If she meant to betray him, she wouldn't do something as sloppy as tilting a camera, unless her hands were shaking, unless she was being watched, unless someone had threatened her. That thought hit harder than it should. He paced toward the window, overlooking Manhattan, its perfect grid, its unbroken rhythm. His empire ran like this city, efficient, predictable, controlled. But Claire Donovan didn't fit into any system he understood. She appeared fragile, but walked into danger alone. She acted terrified, but carried secrets close to her chest. She was either the greatest liability he'd stumbled upon, or the key to a conspiracy much larger than he imagined. For the first time, Sebastian whispered a truth he didn't want to believe. Someone is using her to get to me. And if that was true, then Claire Donovan's life was hanging by a thread tied directly to him. Sebastian Hale didn't plan to follow Claire again. He told himself last night had been an exception, an instinctive reaction, nothing more. But when 6 o'clock struck and she clocked out from her shift at the bookstore cafe, he was already parked half a block away, engine idling, watching her through the fading afternoon light. She looked different today. Shoulders tighter, eyes darting every few seconds. She kept clutching her messenger bag as if something inside it could explode. Something or someone had terrified her long before last night. Claire hurried toward the subway entrance, weaving through crowds with surprising speed. Sebastian slipped into the flow behind her, blending into the rush hour chaos. He stayed 3 bodies back, watching the way she moved. Fast, determined, but always glancing over her shoulder. She knew she was being watched. On the platform, Claire stepped onto the train just as the doors began to close. Sebastian shoved forward, slipping inside in the last second. The car jolted, rattling down the tracks toward Brooklyn. Claire didn't sit. She stood near the doors, staring at the reflection in the window, like she was checking if her own shadow was following her. Halfway through the ride, she pulled out a folded envelope-worn edges, stained like someone had handled it with sweaty fingers. She opened it slightly, revealing only a glimpse of what looked like numbers. Banking numbers? Offshore codes. Something dangerous enough to ruin lives. Sebastian's pulse tightened. That envelope did not belong in the hands of a maid. When the train screeched into the next station, Claire bolted out. Sebastian followed, but she was fast, far faster than someone who claimed she didn't want trouble. She darted up the stairs, onto the street, and headed toward the industrial outskirts of Brooklyn. Then she disappeared. 1 second she was there. The next, gone swallowed by the maze of warehouses. Sebastian quickened his pace, scanning alleyways, listening for footsteps. A faint echo reached him from the right. He followed it, turning into a narrow path behind a shuttered factory. That's when he saw her. Claire stood with her back against a brick wall, gripping her messenger bag like a shield. 3 men cornered her, blocking every way out. Their voices were low, threatening, dangerous. Claire whispered, "I did what you asked. Leave me alone." One man grabbed her arm. Sebastian stepped into the alley, voice cold as steel. "Let her go." All 3 froze, and Claire's eyes widened, not with relief, not with fear, but with something far more devastating. Recognition. She knew this moment was coming, and she knew it would change everything. Claire didn't run immediately. She waited until the 3 men disappeared around the corner. Then she pushed past Sebastian, clutching her arm where one of them had grabbed her. "Don't follow me," she whispered, voice trembling. "Please, not tonight." But Sebastian was already stepping beside her, matching her pace as she hurried down the dim Brooklyn street. "You think I'm letting you walk home alone after that?" he said. She didn't answer. She just pulled her hood tighter and kept moving. 10 minutes later, she stopped in front of a worn brick apartment building. The hallway smelled of old paint and radiator heat. She climbed the narrow stairs quickly, as if afraid the walls themselves might collapse. Inside the apartment, something beeped a slow, rhythmic tone. Claire dropped her bag and rushed into the bedroom. "Ethan!" she breathed. A teenage boy, pale, sweating, barely able to lift his head, lay curled on the mattress. An oxygen machine hummed beside him, tubes tangled like desperate vines. His eyes fluttered open. "Claire, okay," he rasped. She knelt at his side, wiping his forehead with her sleeve. "You're not okay. Your fever's worse." Sebastian stood in the doorway, frozen. Claire had never seemed small to him before, but now, kneeling beside her brother, she looked heartbreakingly fragile. A girl carrying a world too heavy for her shoulders. Ethan exhaled shakily. Did they come again? Claire stiffened. Sebastian heard it, fear sharpened into silence. "They said they'd hurt her," Ethan whispered, voice cracking. "If she didn't deliver what they wanted." Claire squeezed his hand. "I won't let anything happen to you. I promise." Ethan closed his eyes, exhausted from the effort of speaking. The oxygen machine beeped faster. Sebastian stepped forward. "How long has he been sick?" Claire didn't look up. 2 years, heart complications. He needs surgery, but insurance won't cover it. And the hospital keeps threatening collections. Her voice broke. "And Marshall's men?" Sebastian asked softly. She swallowed hard. "They found out I work in your penthouse. They said if I didn't help them access certain files, they'd take Ethan away. Or worse." She brushed Ethan's hair back with shaking fingers. "I didn't want to betray you," she whispered. "I just didn't want to bury him." For the first time in a decade, Sebastian Hale felt something unfamiliar tightening in his chest, something dangerously close to compassion. Because now he understood the truth. Claire wasn't the threat. She was the bait, and someone wanted her destroyed. The night air in Brooklyn felt heavier the next evening, thick with the kind of silence that warned people to stay inside. Claire Donovan stood at the mouth of the alley behind her apartment building, clutching a small grocery bag to her chest. She'd gone out to buy soup and medicine for Ethan, praying his fever would break. But the second she stepped into the alley, she knew she wasn't alone. A slow clap echoed between the brick walls. "Well, look who decided to show her face." Claire froze. 3 men stepped out from behind a dumpster. The same men from the warehouse district. The same ones Sebastian had chased off. But tonight they weren't running. Tonight they looked confident, like they knew she had no one beside her. Claire took a step back. "I told you, I'm not doing this anymore." The leader smirked. "Funny, because our boss says you still owe him." He flicked a knife open, letting the blade glint under the weak streetlight. "And he doesn't like being told no." Her heartbeat roared inside her ears. "You said if I did what you asked, you'd leave Ethan alone. That was before you messed things up," he snarled. Before Hale started sniffing around. Claire's breath caught. "You think I wanted him involved? I didn't tell him anything." "That's the problem." He stepped closer. "You're unpredictable, a liability, and liabilities get erased." She stumbled backward, groceries dropping from her hands. Cans rolled across the pavement. "Please," Claire whispered. "Not here. My brother, he's inside. He's sick. Not our problem." One man grabbed her arm, twisting it painfully behind her back. She cried out. The leader pressed the knife under her chin, lifting her face toward him. "You're going to finish what you started," he said. "You're going to get us access to Hale's files, or we're going to take Ethan someplace you'll never find him." A tear slipped down her cheek. "I can't." He tightened security. "Then figure it out." Suddenly, headlights flooded the alley. A black SUV screeched to a stop, tires skidding. The men shielded their eyes. The passenger door flew open. Sebastian Hale stepped out, no hesitation, no words, just raw fury carved into human form. Claire had never seen him angry before. Not like this. The knife dropped from the thug's hand. And Sebastian spoke, each word cold enough to slice bone. Touch her again, and I'll end every one of you. Sebastian didn't shout. He didn't need to. The moment his voice cut through the alley, the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. The men stiffened, as if the shadows themselves had suddenly turned hostile. Claire's breath hitched. She'd prayed he wouldn't come, that he wouldn't see her like this, cornered, helpless, humiliated. But when she looked up and saw him standing there beneath the harsh beam of his SUV headlights, something inside her cracked wide open. Relief, fear, shame, all tangled together. Sebastian stepped closer, his expression carved from stone. Let go of her. The man holding Claire hesitated only a second, but it was 1 second too long. Sebastian reached him in 3 strides, seized his wrist, and twisted sharply. The man screamed as the knife clattered to the ground. Claire stumbled backward, pressing herself against the wall, shaken. The other 2 men moved as if to jump in, but Sebastian's security team, 2 silent figures dressed in black, appeared behind him, guns drawn but pointed downward in a warning. Sebastian didn't look back. He didn't need to. Walk away while you still can. The leader spat on the ground. You think this ends tonight? Sebastian's fist collided with his jaw before he finished the sentence. The man collapsed against the pavement, choking on blood and surprise. Sebastian grabbed the front of his jacket and hissed, She owes you nothing! You touch her again, you breathe near her again, you disappear. Do you understand me? The man nodded weakly. Sebastian released him with disgust. Get out of my sight! The 3 thugs stumbled out of the alley, tripping over each other in their rush to escape. Only when their footsteps disappeared did Sebastian turn toward Claire. She expected anger, accusations, cold judgment. Instead, his expression softened just slightly, but enough to break her composure. Are you hurt? He asked, voice low. Claire shook her head, though her knees trembled. You didn't have to come. Yes, he said, stepping closer. I did. She looked away, swallowing thickly. You don't understand. They're not going to stop. They'll come back, and they'll go after Ethan. Sebastian's jaw tightened. Not anymore. How can you be so sure? Because, he said, lifting her chin gently so she would meet his eyes, I'm involved now. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. A dangerous one. A life-changing one. And for the first time, Claire didn't feel alone. Claire didn't speak for nearly a full minute after Sebastian's words settled in the cold air. She just stood there in the alley, arms wrapped around herself, breathing unsteadily as if holding her ribs together. The streetlight flickered above them, casting shifting shadows across her face, fear, guilt, exhaustion. Finally, she whispered, You shouldn't be involved. You don't know what they're capable of. Sebastian stepped closer, his voice controlled but undeniably gentle. Then tell me. All of it. Claire looked away. Her throat tightened. He could see the war behind her eyes, the instinct to run, to hide everything, colliding with the crushing weight of having no one left to trust. I never wanted this, she began, voice cracking. I never wanted to be part of anything dangerous. I just wanted to work, pay the bills, and keep my aunt alive. Sebastian stayed silent, letting her unravel at her own pace. They approached me months ago, she continued. At first, it was small things: deliver a package, drop off documents. They said it was legal paperwork. I believed them. Her voice trembled. Then, they found out where I worked. They said your penthouse was the final step. They wanted me to plant a device near your office. His eyes hardened, but not at her. Did you do it? No. Claire's breath hitched. I couldn't. I tilted the camera instead and pretended. I lied to them. But they didn't believe me. She hugged her arms tighter. After that, they came for Ethan. Sebastian inhaled sharply. They told me if I didn't find a way into your files, they'd take him somewhere I'd never find him. They made me listen to a recording of him crying. They made me think he was already gone. Her knees buckled slightly, and Sebastian caught her elbow before she fell. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't want to hurt you. I just didn't know what else to do. He lifted her chin gently so she was forced to meet his gaze. "Claire, look at me." His voice softened in a way she'd never heard before. "If they threatened Ethan, you didn't betray me. You survived." A tear slid down her cheek. "You should hate me," she whispered. "I don't." Claire's breath caught. Something fragile flickered between them, an understanding neither expected, neither welcomed, yet neither could ignore. Sebastian stepped closer, lowering his voice to a promise only she could hear. "From this moment on, no one threatens you. Or your family, not while I'm breathing." Vincent Hale had a talent for sensing weakness, even from miles away. While Sebastian was in Brooklyn defending Claire Donovan, Vincent sat in his penthouse office, overlooking the Manhattan skyline, swirling a glass of scotch, as if he'd been expecting tonight's chaos. A notification flashed across his multiple monitors. Sebastian Hale's security detail deployed unexpectedly. Location, East Brooklyn. Duration, 17 minutes. Vincent smirked. "So," he murmured, "the maid finally became useful." He tapped a command on his keyboard, opening a hidden folder containing surveillance images, Claire entering buildings, Claire receiving envelopes, Claire meeting his men. Every photo crafted a perfect lie, that she was willingly feeding Vincent information, and he planned to use that lie like a knife. Vincent dialed one of his enforcers. "Status?" a voice answered, shaking slightly. "We ran into complications. Hale showed up." Vincent's smile vanished. And he intervened." "Intervened," Vincent repeated flatly. "Meaning you failed." Silence. He set his glass down with a soft clink. "Listen to me very carefully. Claire Donovan must be frightened, pressured, desperate, not protected. If Hale sees her as innocent, she becomes an asset, and we cannot have Hale growing fond of her." He leaned back in his chair. "Bring the boy. If she won't break for herself, she'll break for him." The enforcer hesitated. "That's risky." Vincent's voice cooled to ice. "Then it's a shame you enjoy breathing." "Do it." The call ended. He turned back to the window, watching the city lights shimmer like fractured diamonds. A shark-like grin pulled at the corner of his mouth. Sebastian Hale might have power, reputation, and an empire built on fear, but he had one fatal weakness. He cared. And Vincent had waited years for the chance to exploit it. He opened another encrypted file, revealing the documents he planted, evidence framing Claire for accessing Hale's financial records. Perfectly forged, impossibly incriminating. Once delivered anonymously to federal investigators, it would force Sebastian to doubt her, distrust her, abandon her. And when Claire had no one left, Vincent would pull the trap shut. "Checkmate is coming, Sebastian," he whispered to the glass, "and your little maid will bring you to your knees." Claire arrived at the Hale penthouse the next morning with barely any sleep, her nerves stretched thin. She kept replaying Sebastian's promise from the night before. "You're not alone anymore." She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to. But people didn't save her. Not in her world. She entered quietly, smoothing her hair, trying to look composed. She needed this job. Ethan needed it. Her aunt needed it. Losing it would mean drowning. But the moment she stepped into the living room, she felt it, the shift in the air. Too still. Too cold. Grant Miller, Sebastian's attorney, stood in front of the marble counter, holding a folder thick with documents. Sebastian was by the window, back turned, shoulders rigid beneath his tailored suit. He looked like someone bracing for impact. Claire felt her stomach drop. Grant cleared his throat. "Claire Donovan?" His voice was unusually formal. "Yes?" she whispered. Grant placed the folder on the table. "Due to recent security concerns, Mr. Hale has decided to terminate your employment here, effective immediately." The world tilted. I don't understand," Claire stammered. "Sebastian, did I do something wrong?" Sebastian didn't turn around. Grant continued, expression unreadable. "Evidence was delivered to our office late last night. It indicates unauthorized access to sensitive financial files. Files only accessible from inside this penthouse." Claire's breath caught. "That's not true. I didn't touch anything, I swear. Grant held up a hand. We're not accusing you of intent, but we cannot ignore the pattern. Someone used your employee profile as a gateway. Her voice broke. Please, I didn't betray anyone. I tried to protect my brother. That's enough, Grant said gently, but firmly. Claire looked at Sebastian, begging silently for him to look at her. Just once. Just enough to know he didn't hate her. But he didn't move an inch, not even when her voice cracked into a whisper. Sebastian, please, I told you the truth. A long, suffocating silence filled the room. Then Sebastian finally spoke. Quiet, strained. Grant will escort you out. It's for your safety. Safety? It felt like an execution. Claire swallowed the sob rising in her throat. She picked up her small tote bag, hands shaking so violently she almost dropped it. I thought you believed me, she whispered. Sebastian's back stayed rigid. This is the only way to keep you alive. Her heart shattered, because somehow that hurt worse than being threatened in any alley. Claire barely remembered how she walked out of the Hale penthouse, her vision blurred, her chest tightening with every step. By the time she reached the elevator, tears were already slipping down her cheeks. Fired. After everything. After telling him the truth. She clutched her tote bag and stumbled out onto the Manhattan sidewalk. The city moved around her, taxis honking, people rushing, storefront lights glowing, but she felt none of it. She felt hollow. She rode the subway back to Brooklyn in silence, gripping the pole until her knuckles turned white. Every time she blinked, she saw Sebastian's back turn toward her. The man who saved her life had just pushed her out of his. For your safety, he'd said. The words tasted like betrayal. By the time she reached her apartment building, her legs were shaking. She rushed up the stairs, fumbling for her keys. Ethan? She called softly. I'm home. No answer. The apartment was dark, too dark. Claire's heartbeat quickened as she set her bag down. Ethan! She repeated, louder this time. Still nothing. A prickling fear climbed up her spine. She moved toward the bedroom and froze. The oxygen machine was toppled sideways, tubes torn from the wall. Ethan's blankets were thrown across the floor, as if he'd been dragged from the bed. A single item lay in the center of the mattress, a burner phone, and next to it, a note handwritten, block letters pressed hard enough to tear the paper. You took too long. Bring the files, or he dies. Claire's scream tore from her throat before she even knew she was making a sound. She grabbed the phone with shaking hands. It rang immediately, as if someone had been waiting. A distorted voice answered. Well, well, sweetheart. Ready to cooperate now? Claire's knees buckled. Where is he? Where's Ethan? Please, he's sick. He needs oxygen. You want him alive? Bring us the access codes from Hale's system. Midnight. Pier 19. I don't have access, she cried. He fired me. That's not our problem, the man hissed. If we don't get what we want, we'll make sure your brother never needs oxygen again. The line clicked. Claire collapsed onto the cold floor, sobbing uncontrollably. Every instinct screamed to run to Sebastian, but she'd lost that right. He didn't trust her anymore. She was alone. Completely, devastatingly alone. But one truth cut through the panic. If she didn't act by midnight, Ethan would die. And Claire Donovan would burn the world down before she let that happen. Sebastian Hale had always trusted data more than people. Data didn't lie. Data didn't tremble or cry or beg to be believed. And yet, for the first time in years, a piece of evidence sat in front of him, one that he desperately wanted to be false. Grant placed the forged report on the conference table. This came in anonymously. Financial logs, access timestamps, and a digital fingerprint, all pointing to Claire Donovan. Sebastian stared at the papers. The numbers lined up too neatly. The timestamps were too perfect. The trail was too clean. And that was the problem. Claire Donovan was many things, fearful, overwhelmed, infuriatingly brave, but she was not a mastermind hacker. This is fabricated, Sebastian finally said. Grant exhaled carefully. Then someone went through a lot of trouble to make it look real. Sebastian picked up one of the pages. On the security footage screenshots, Claire's silhouette appeared inside his office corridor. But he recognized the detail no one else noticed, the reflection on the marble floor. The shoe imprint wasn't Claire's. It belonged to someone taller. He knew that tread pattern. Vincent Lorne had the same Italian-made dress shoes, custom soles with a diamond-shaped imprint. A sharp chill sliced through Sebastian. He rose abruptly from his chair. Pull the logs on Vincent's last visits, cross-reference them with building access and external camera feeds. Grant blinked. You think Vincent framed her? I think Vincent wants a war. Sebastian's phone buzzed an alert from his private surveillance system. A motion-triggered camera near Claire's apartment had gone offline. Then another. Then her oxygen machine appeared in view, toppled on the floor. His pulse spiked. Grant frowned. Sebastian? What is it? But Sebastian was already moving, grabbing his coat. They took Ethan. Grant's eyes widened. How do you know? Because Vincent doesn't make threats. He makes examples. He stopped at the door, his voice dropping to something colder than steel. And Claire is next. Grant stepped into his path. Sebastian, what are you planning? Sebastian's jaw tightened. Fixing what I destroyed. You didn't destroy anything. Yes, he said, bitterness cutting into every word. I did. I fired the only person who trusted me. I left her unprotected. His gaze burned with a rage clearer than any emotion Grant had ever seen in him, and Vincent Lorne is going to regret touching her family. Sebastian Hale walked out, not as a man seeking truth, but as a storm preparing to break. Claire didn't remember how she made it back into her apartment after the call. Her legs moved on instinct, her breath jagged and shallow, but her mind was gone, lost somewhere between terror and disbelief. She collapsed beside Ethan's overturned bed, clutching the blanket he had slept under just hours earlier. It still smelled faintly of detergent and the peppermint shampoo she used on him. She pressed it to her face, shaking violently. They took him, she whispered to no one. They took my baby, they took him. Her hands trembled so fiercely she could barely dial, but she tried anyway, calling hospitals, neighbors, anyone who might have seen something. Every answer was the same. No, sorry, nothing. Her vision blurred with tears, dripping onto the blanket. She choked out a sob raw, broken, desperate. This is my fault, she whispered. I should have protected you. I should have done more. She curled into herself, arms wrapped around her knees, rocking back and forth as panic clawed at her ribs. The apartment felt too quiet, too empty, as if the air itself had been stolen along with Ethan. She stared at the burner phone on the floor. It felt like a bomb every second, ticking closer to midnight. She wanted to call Sebastian. God, she wanted to. But the memory of him turning his back on her cut deeper than any knife. He won't believe me, she whispered. He thinks I betrayed him. Her iPhone buzzed with a notification she almost ignored until she saw the name glowing on the screen. Aunt Nora, I see you. Her chest tightened. With shaking fingers, she opened the message. Her condition worsened. Immediate decisions required. Claire pressed her fist to her mouth to silence the scream rising in her throat. Ethan gone. Aunt Nora dying. Sebastian gone. And the men who took Ethan demanding something she didn't have. Her world wasn't just falling apart. It was collapsing with no pieces left to hold on to. She crawled toward the coffee table, knocking over a stack of unpaid medical bills. One envelope slid out, revealing a photo of her, Ethan, and Aunt Nora at Coney Island, smiling, sunburned, happy in a way they hadn't been for years. Claire clutched the photo to her chest. I'll get you back, she whispered through tears, even if it kills me. She didn't know Sebastian was already racing toward her, or that he would hear her sobbing before she even knew he was there. Sebastian reached Claire's apartment building in under 12 minutes, a drive that should have taken 25. He didn't remember every turn, every red light he blew through. All he remembered was the sound he heard when he stepped into her apartment. Claire sobbing, Real, broken, soul-deep sobbing, the kind he hadn't heard from anyone since the night he lost his fiancée. He followed the sound into the bedroom, stopping in the doorway. Claire knelt on the floor beside Ethan's overturned bed, gripping a photo as if it were the only thing tethering her to reality. "Claire," he said softly. She flinched, looking up at him with red, swollen eyes. "What are you doing here?" "I saw the alerts. Your cameras went offline. Something happened." She laughed, a hollow, painful sound. "They took him, Sebastian. They took Ethan, and I have no way to get him back." Her voice cracked into a sob. Sebastian stepped forward and knelt beside her. "Tell me everything." With shaking hands, she handed him the burner phone and the note. The moment Sebastian read it, something inside him snapped, clean, sharp, lethal. Pier 19, midnight. Bring Hale's access codes. Claire wiped her face. "I don't have the codes. I don't have anything. They're going to kill him, Sebastian. There he caught her hands. Claire, look at me." She did, eyes full of terror. "You're not going alone," he said. "And they're not leaving that pier with your brother." She shook her head. "You don't understand. They said if I bring anyone, I'm not anyone." There was no arrogance in the words, no ego, just truth. Sebastian Hale was a weapon, and tonight he intended to be used. He stood and pulled out his phone. "Grant, assemble the team, full tactical, quiet entry. I want drones on Pier 19 within 20 minutes. Claire rose to her feet, unsteady. "What if they hurt him before we get there?" "They won't," Sebastian said. "Vincent wants leverage. He won't waste it early." "But what if you're wrong?" He stepped closer, his voice low, steady, anchoring her panic. "Then I'll burn that pier to the ground to get him back." For the first time since Ethan disappeared, Claire inhaled without shaking. Because Sebastian wasn't just promising a rescue, he was promising a war. And Vincent Lorne had just picked the wrong man to provoke. Vincent Lorne watched the drone feed from his private office, fingers steepled beneath his chin. The grainy footage showed Sebastian's men assembling near Pier 19, silent, disciplined, armed. Exactly as Vincent expected. He smirked. "Predictable, Sebastian. Always leading with force instead of fear." He pressed a button on his desk. A new screen flickered to life. Ethan, tied to a chair inside an abandoned shipping container, pale and wheezing, his oxygen tank replaced with a cheap plastic one that barely worked. Vincent leaned closer to the camera. "How's our little insurance policy doing?" A guard off-screen replied nervously. "Kids fading." "If we don't get real oxygen, we're not babysitters," Vincent snapped. "He only needs to stay alive until Claire hands us the codes. After that, he becomes irrelevant." The guard swallowed. "And Hale? What if he storms the pier?" Vincent smiled coldly. "He will. That's the beauty of it. Sebastian thinks he's unstoppable, but for the first time in years he's afraid. And fear makes men stupid." He tapped another key. A satellite map popped up, revealing a second set of armed men concealed in the warehouse rafters, overlooking Pier 19, rifles aimed at the walkway. "When Hale arrives with his little maid," Vincent said, "we'll take them both. Hale loses his empire, Claire takes the fall, and the FBI gets a perfectly gift-wrapped scapegoat." He downed a sip of scotch. "Tonight ends everything." A buzzing alert interrupted his monologue. The screen shifted to footage from Claire's apartment hallway, Sebastian carrying Claire out the door, her face pale but determined. Vincent's smirk faded. He zoomed in. Claire wasn't broken, she wasn't begging, she wasn't defeated, she was angry. "Interesting," he murmured. "She still has fight." Then, for the first time, something like annoyance flickered across his face. He hadn't anticipated Sebastian getting emotionally involved, and he definitely hadn't anticipated Claire's loyalty remaining intact after the firing. "Fine," he hissed. "If they want a reunion, let's welcome them properly." He sent a message to his head enforcer. Plan B. Detonate the north entrance if Hale gets too close. Make the girl watch. Vincent leaned back, satisfied. Tonight wasn't just about destroying Sebastian Hale's empire. Tonight was about breaking the one thing Sebastian never expected to have again: someone worth losing. The wind at Pier 19 whipped against the metal beams, carrying the scent of rust, salt water, and something darker fear. Sebastian's SUV stopped a block away. Engines cut, lights off. His tactical team split into formation, moving like shadows along the abandoned warehouses. Claire stepped out last. Her hands trembled, but her jaw was set with a determination Sebastian hadn't seen before. She wasn't here as bait. She wasn't here as a victim. She was here as Ethan's sister. "Stay behind me," Sebastian murmured. "No," Claire said, meeting his eyes. "If Vincent sees you first, he'll kill Ethan. He wants me." Sebastian clenched his teeth. She wasn't wrong. A drone feed in his earpiece crackled. Multiple heat signatures inside the main container, and explosives under the north entryway. Claire sucked in a breath. "Explosives? They'll kill him." Sebastian touched her arm gently. "Not if we're faster." They approached quietly. The metal of the pier groaned beneath their steps. Claire's heart pounded so loudly, she barely noticed the cold seeping into her bones. Then, a voice boomed through a speaker. "Nice of you to join us, sweetheart." Vincent. He stepped out from behind a stack of cargo crates, wearing a tailored charcoal coat and a grin that made Claire's stomach twist. Two armed men flanked him, rifles raised. "Where's Ethan?" she shouted. Vincent nodded toward a shipping container. The door hung slightly ajar. Inside, Claire saw Ethan slumped forward in his chair, wheezing shallowly. Her knees nearly buckled. Sebastian moved one step forward, but Vincent raised a detonator. Ah! One wrong move and the kid becomes fireworks, and I'm very tired of waiting." Claire's breath shattered. "What do you want?" she cried. "The codes," Vincent said. "Access to Hale's offshore accounts. You give me those, you walk out of here alive." Sebastian's voice dropped to lethal calm. "You're bluffing." Vincent laughed. "Try me." Claire reached into her bag slowly. Not for codes, she didn't have any, but she needed Vincent to believe she did. Sebastian's earpiece buzzed. "Sir, we have snipers in place, but the container is rigged. One wrong shot." He cursed under his breath. Vincent tilted his head. "Clock's ticking. What's it going to be?" Before Claire could answer, a thunderous explosion ripped through the far end of the pier. A distraction not from Vincent, but from someone else entirely. And for the first time, Vincent's confidence cracked. The explosion at the far end of Pier 19 sent crates tumbling and birds scattering into the night sky. Smoke billowed upward, orange light reflecting off the dark water. Vincent spun toward the blast, momentarily thrown off balance. That single second of confusion was all Sebastian needed. "Move!" he barked to Claire. She sprinted toward Ethan's container while Sebastian rushed Vincent. Gunfire erupted from the rafters as Vincent's men fired at silhouettes they couldn't see clearly through the smoke. Claire reached the container, yanked the door wide open and froze. Inside, Ethan lifted his head weakly, eyes glassy but alive. "Claire," he whispered. She dropped to her knees, cutting the ropes with trembling hands. "I'm here. I'm right here. I've got you." Behind her, shouts and gunfire echoed, but she stayed focused on Ethan until a familiar voice cut through the chaos. "Claire, get out of there!" Sebastian's voice. She looked back just in time to see Sebastian and Vincent locked in a brutal struggle, Sebastian forcing the detonator out of Vincent's grip. The device clattered across the pier, sparks crackling at the edges. Vincent broke free and staggered back, panting. "You think you're winning, Hale?" he snarled. "You don't even know who you're protecting." Sebastian aimed his gun at him. "I know enough." "No," Vincent hissed. "You don't know anything." He pulled a USB from his coat and hurled it toward Claire. It skidded to her feet. "That," Vincent said with a sick grin, "is the real reason she was chosen." Claire's stomach twisted. Sebastian didn't look away from Vincent. "What is this?" Vincent laughed darkly. "Your fiancée, sweet, innocent Lily. She wasn't killed in a random explosion. She worked for me. She infiltrated your life. And when she got scared, I tied up the loose end." Sebastian's breath stopped. "And guess who has the last remaining files proving it?" Vincent taunted. "Her old accountant, Claire's aunt. Once we found Nora, using the maid as bait was easy." Claire felt the blood drain from her face. Sebastian turned toward her slowly, eyes burning not with blame, but with a new, horrific understanding. Vincent smirked. "You see? Claire wasn't chosen for weakness. She was chosen because she was already connected to the woman who betrayed you." The truth detonated harder than any bomb on the pier, and Sebastian Hale's world cracked in half. The sirens faded long before Claire realized the night was finally quiet. Pier 19, once echoing with gunfire and Vincent's taunts, now lay eerily still. Just the sway of water and the distant hum of police radios. Sebastian stood beside her as paramedics lifted Ethan onto a stretcher, an oxygen mask secured over his face. His chest rose weakly, but he was breathing, really breathing, and that alone nearly brought Claire to her knees. "He's stable," a medic said. "We're taking him to Lenox Hill. He'll need monitoring, but he's going to make it." Claire exhaled a trembling breath, her hand covering her mouth. Relief washed over her so violently it almost hurt. Sebastian stepped closer, but stopped just short of touching her. "Claire, I'm sorry." She shook her head. "You didn't take him. Vincent did." "No," Sebastian said quietly. "But I walked away. I made you think you were alone." His voice cracked at the edges. "And that will never happen again." Claire studied him, blood on his shirt, smoke in his hair, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. He looked nothing like the untouchable man she met weeks ago. He looked human, broken in ways she suddenly understood too well. "Sebastian," she whispered. "What Vincent said about Lily." His jaw tightened, but he didn't look away. "It was true, all of it. I spent years grieving a woman who never loved me, a woman who planned to destroy me." He inhaled shakily. "And your aunt was dragged into that world without her choosing, just like you." A tear slid down Claire's cheek, not from pain this time, but from the weight lifting off her chest. "I didn't know. Nora never told me." "She protected you," he said. "The way you protected Ethan." For a moment, the chaos around them disappeared. There was only the two of them, two people scarred by the same man, standing in the ruins he created. Sebastian reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. His hand cupped her cheek, warm despite the cold night. "You're safe now, Claire. I swear it." She leaned into his palm, her voice a whispered truth. "I believe you." For the first time since this nightmare began, Claire felt the strength to stand upright, not because she was alone, but because someone was finally standing with her. Behind them, police escorted a handcuffed Vincent Lorne into a cruiser, his empire collapsing around him. And for the first time, justice didn't feel like a dream. It felt real. 1 month later, Manhattan felt different. Maybe it was the warmer air drifting from the river. Maybe it was the way Claire Donovan finally walked without fear, shadowing her every step. Or maybe it was because the monster who hunted her family now sat in a federal detention center with no chance of ever breathing free air again. Justice wasn't just served, it was absolute. At Lenox Hill Hospital, Ethan recovered faster than expected, once real oxygen and medication were provided. Doctors marveled at his progress. Claire didn't. She knew what hope looked like. She had fought too hard for it. Today, he was finally being discharged. Claire waited in the hallway, smoothing the front of her simple dress, while Sebastian signed final paperwork with the attending physician. His presence still carried authority-tailored coat, polished shoes, but something fundamental had changed. His edges had softened. His voice lowered when he spoke to her, and the walls he once hid behind had cracked open. When he returned to her side, he held her gaze with a warmth she never expected to see from him. "He's officially cleared," Sebastian said. "You both can go home." Claire smiled, small but real. "I don't have much of a home left." Sebastian hesitated only a second. "Then come with me." Her breath caught. "Sebastian, I'm not asking out of obligation, he said quietly, or guilt. You brought light into a place I didn't know was dark. You challenged me. You saved me from truths I was too afraid to see. He stepped closer. And I don't want a life without you in it. Claire looked down, overwhelmed. I don't know what I can offer you. Your honesty, he said. Your stubbornness. The way you fight for the people you love. His eyes softened. Claire, you're everything I didn't believe I deserved. She felt her chest ache in the best possible way. Ethan peeked out from behind the doorway, grinning weakly. Are you seriously going to make the man wait for an answer? Claire laughed, really laughed for the first time in months. She wiped her eyes and looked up at Sebastian. Yes, she whispered. I'll come with you. He exhaled like he'd finally been allowed to breathe. Gently, he cupped her face and kissed her forehead, not rushed, not desperate, but with a tenderness that said everything words couldn't. Outside, Manhattan glowed in the late afternoon light. Sebastian Hale was no longer frozen. Claire Donovan was no longer alone. And for the first time, their future wasn't a battle. It was a beginning. So that's how our story comes to an end. And if you're still here with me right now, my friend, it means something in this journey touched your heart in a way you didn't expect. Maybe it was Claire's courage. Maybe it was Sebastian learning to feel again. Or maybe it was the reminder we all need, that even in the darkest moments, we are never truly alone. The Stoics used to say, the obstacle becomes the way. Life will throw fear, betrayal, and heartbreak at us, but like Marcus Aurelius wrote, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Real strength begins there. Claire found that strength. Sebastian did too. And you can, in your own life, in your own battles. If this story made you feel something hope, healing, or even the quiet belief that tomorrow can be better, then stay with us. Like, share, and subscribe so we can keep walking through more stories together. Stories that remind us of who we are and who we can become. You matter. Your journey matters. And I'm grateful you're here.